Some promises become curses. For a long time, abandoned places were my whole world, a world I shared with my younger brother, Owen, and the promise I made to him was something I could never escape, no matter how many years passed, no matter how far I tried to run from the crumbling skeletons of old houses and ruined hallways. I didn't stop exploring because I was afraid of rotten floors or broken glass. I stopped because every empty building became a mausoleum, and every shattered window became a jagged reminder of what I had done. Every time I thought about stepping back into that darkness, the memories took over. The icy pressure in my chest, my pounding heart, the sweat gathering in my palms. Owen was 2 years younger than me, reckless and hungry for every secret the world tried to hide. He was the kind of kid who climbed through a window before you even had time to check for a no trespassing sign. The kind who vanished inside before you had made up your mind. I was supposed to be the older one, the braver one, but he was always the one pulling me forward. If I found an old barn worth checking out, he was already inside. If I hesitated at the edge of the woods, he would just flash that crooked grin and wave me over. He was fearless, or maybe just too young to know what fear really was. One night, we were sitting in a rotting gazebo with flashlights that were already dying and a backpack stuffed with gear for the future, a cracked compass, a frayed rope, tactical gloves our parents had given us. To him, they were sacred relics. He said, "When we're older, we'll visit every abandoned place, hospitals, surviving ghost towns. Promise me we'll keep doing this forever." I should have laughed it off, but instead, I shook his hand and promised. When you're young, some promises feel magical. A year later, I got my driver's license. I decided to take everyone on a trip. I found us a place, an empty house far outside town, standing alone among weeds and overgrowth, a house with no scary stories or local legends attached to it. Just one of those places that used to be full of life, and now, for some reason, stands abandoned. I convinced everyone to go. Mom agreed reluctantly, joking about my newly earned license. Dad had doubts, but Owen was relentless, so eventually, Dad agreed too. The kid talked the whole drive about our future trips. He spoke about that house like it was our first real urbex, the beginning of endless adventures. We never made it there. The crash is a wound too deep to truly describe. I remember the bend in the road, my sweaty hands on the wheel, the screech of tires. I remember my mother's last word, Owen's quiet breath, the sound of glass and metal breaking apart. But more than anything, I remember that I was the one driving. That was all it took. One mistake. My mother and Owen died. My father survived, but something inside him went out and died with them. He made it through the funeral, then through our house, no longer like a man, but like a shadow. In the end, he disappeared, leaving behind only the echo of what our family used to be. I never tried to find him. I don't think he wanted that, and I was left alone, with a promise I could never keep, and a guilt that never went away. After that, I stayed far away from abandoned places. Even the thought of them made me feel sick, as if the past could close over me again and finish what it had started. Therapy helped me survive, but it never freed me from the voices, their voices, the ones that came back whenever I was alone, especially Owen's voice, tangled up with that old promise I could never fulfill. Years passed. I tried to build a new life, but everything I did was just a slow, circling around an unfinished story. In the end, I started to understand that the only way forward was to keep my promise, to go to the house at the edge of town, to the place where everything ended before it had even really begun. When I finally drove there, the sun was already setting, stretching long shadows across the fields. The main road turned into a narrow, cracked route. Trees pressed in from both sides, and the silence became suffocating. I tightened my hands on the wheel and felt that old fear rising inside me again, clawing its way up from my gut into my throat. I was driving very slowly, very carefully. I hadn't been behind the wheel since that day. Then suddenly, a truck appeared behind me. Its horn ripped through the silence so violently that my whole body tensed. For a moment, I saw headlights in the mirror, and panic hit me like a wave. I barely managed to pull onto the shoulder, shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. I sat there, staring at the empty road, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Not to the driver, to the ghosts. 20 minutes passed before I started driving again. The house was smaller than I remembered, crouched behind wild grass and broken trees, like gray bones against the darkening sky. It looked like every other ruin I had ever seen, but there was something about it that made my heart slam painfully against my ribs. I almost turned back. Instead, I grabbed my flashlight, stepped through the sagging side door, and forced myself inside. The air was stale, heavy with dust and rot. My footsteps echoed through the empty hallway. The first rooms were quiet, stripped bare except for shadows and debris. A sunken sofa, a split table, an old rug. For a moment, I almost felt like I used to. Maybe that was all it would take. One visit, just to feel that wonderful sense of nostalgia again. I thought about Owen, about the way he always rushed ahead, the beam of his flashlight bouncing off the walls, his laughter echoing through empty rooms. For one heartbeat, I let myself remember him alive, not as a loss, but as my younger brother, the one who could make any place feel like home. Right after that, a wave of pain and longing hit me so hard I couldn't stop the tears. My beloved little brother and my wonderful mother. Why them? Why not me? I wiped my face and went upstairs. It was colder on the second floor. I stepped into the small room on the left, almost empty. Some debris, a broken chair, an old bed frame. The beam of my flashlight moved across the floor and stopped on a cap lying beside the bed. I froze. For a moment, I just stared at it. It was old, dusty, worn out, ordinary, the kind there are hundreds of. And that was exactly why I didn't want to start reading too much into it. But I still felt that sudden tightness in my chest. I picked it up carefully. My brother had an identical one. My heart was pounding harder than it should have. I turned it over in my hands. It didn't make sense. He had never been here. We had never made it to this house. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was holding something that should not have been there. I set it down slowly, and only when I pulled my hand back did I realize I had barely been breathing the whole time. I hurried back downstairs. I looked around and made my way into the kitchen. The flashlight beam slid across the floor and stopped on something silver beside the leg of a broken chair. My mother's bracelet, thin, delicate, with the clasp bent in exactly the same way it used to be. My breath caught. The cap could still be dismissed as memory playing tricks on me. The bracelet was impossible. I placed it on the table, my hands slick with sweat, and that was when I heard the whisper, a soft, wet voice, so close it felt like someone was breathing directly into my ear. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. No one. Panic was rising. I threw myself toward the hallway, but instead of returning to the main passage, I stumbled into a room that had no right to be there. Smaller, with no windows. In the middle of it stood a black plastic box. Far too familiar. I stared at it for a moment without moving. Owen kept his equipment in a box, just like that at home. A compass, rope, gloves, flashlights, and all the junk he treated like real expedition gear. I felt cold all over. I stepped closer. I crouched down. With trembling hands, I slowly opened the latches. Inside were gloves, black, fingerless. One split at the seam, with dirt ground into the knuckles. His gloves.
You killed us.
Owen's voice, right behind me, impossible and yet unmistakable. I spun around violently, sweeping the darkness with my flashlight. There was nothing there except the dark and the pounding of my own heart. I stumbled through the next door, barely able to see anything, and found myself in another room that should not have existed. On the floor stood my mother's shoes, the same black ones she had been wearing that day. Her voice came out of the darkness, calm, icy. The house turned into a labyrinth. Doors opened into endless hallways, each one narrower, darker. The layout changed every time I turned around. Stairs led nowhere. Hallways looped back into rooms I'd already seen. Sometimes there was nothing beyond a doorway, except swirling blackness, as if the inside of the house had rotted away until only emptiness remained. And the voices followed me.
It's your fault.
We were supposed to do this together. You promised.
Why did you bring us here?
You weren't careful. You ruined everything.
Every accusation was exactly what I had been repeating to myself for years. I screamed back at them in a hoarse, high-pitched voice. I know. I'm sorry. Please. I'm sorry. But the house only tightened around me more and more. The walls seemed to breathe. The air grew thick with rot and grief. Sweat ran down my back. My legs were giving out beneath me. My flashlight flickered like it was about to die.
You should have died with us.
My mother whispered right beside my ear. Owen.
You promised, big brother.
I forced my way through door after door, stumbling over rubble, chased by voices growing louder and sharper. Every word cut like a knife. My own voice mixed with them, panicked, pleading. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Time fell apart. I could have been running for hours. It could have only been minutes. The house turned into a trap that spun me in circles through memory and terror. Grief and guilt merged into one until I couldn't tell them apart anymore. At last, I saw the door, the real front door, exactly the way I remembered it. I threw myself at it and burst outside into the freezing dusk. I didn't look back. I ran to the car, started it with numb hands and drove. My heart was pounding like a hammer. My throat burned. I wiped tears and sweat from my face. It's over now. I made it out. I'm safe. I left that house behind. Only when I had driven a little farther and glanced into the mirror, out of instinct, did I see them. Owen, silent, pale, wearing the cap, staring straight at me. My mother beside him, white-faced, the bracelet glinting on her wrist. They didn't move. They just stared.
We were supposed to do this together for the rest of our lives, big brother.
My hands jerked the wheel. The tires screamed. Headlights exploded in the dark. Impact. I woke up in a hospital with the taste of iron in my mouth and the sound of machines pounding in my ears. Alone. The nurse told me I was lucky. They found me alone, wrecked on the old road outside town. Just me. When she left, I glanced at the table beside the bed. There was a single black glove on it, fingerless, with a split seam. I stared at it, paralyzed, when a whisper sounded right beside my ear.
You promised.